Hello, how's it going? Well, I am going to start hosting these live streams. The Streamyard link is provided in case anybody wants to join the conversation. I was going here because I wanted to test out the new tools. Um, One of those is the intro because I was had done getting it put together and I wanted to see how that was going to go, and also wanted to play with these. So here, let me do this here real quick with these things here. So as far as how to figure out how uh, StreamYard works, I guess there's a learning curve, and I was practicing playing with it, and I just wanted to give it a go around and see if I can get some of these things to work the way they are. I understand them. I know sometimes the plan and the actual thing are two different things, and I am gonna have some hard stops because, well, my wife is gonna be here any minute now, and two, there's an appointment that I do have to meet. But since I was already on Chad's live stream, like I said, I was just gonna test out these features, and I saw him live, so I did that for a little bit, and I have a few more minutes before I run off. But in case anybody's around, I guess the hard stop is when my wife gets home. But the things that I was hearing, different ideas, and as far as conversation goes, there's nothing wrong with ideas. There's nothing wrong with opinions, because, well, that's the whole point of having an opinion. That's the whole point of conversation is you want to engage with somebody regarding what's on your mind, whether good or bad. That's a completely different conversation, I suppose. But um, the ability to express yourself, there's nothing wrong with that, I suppose, and there's nothing wrong with having an opinion. And, well, the problem arises most of the time is with the opinions. Every now and then, opinions may differ, and sometimes people might take it the wrong way, misinterpret, and also maybe one gets frustrated because somebody else misinterpreted what you were trying to say. But anyways, having opinions and having conversations, that's actually not bad. And actually, one of the complaints was, things are going bad and we have to intervene in some way, shape, or form. And yeah, things are, you know, I guess there's different ideas going around for some time now as far as whether we're improving as a society or if we're degrading as a society. And some people say, no, we're making progress. And people say, well, actually, that's actually more destructive than constructive. But anyways, let me read this first thing here that I have on the wall here. A person begins to disappear the moment they accept another's definition of their worth. And, sometimes I guess that's the problem with trying to keep up appearances, trying to keep up with what somebody, with what you think others perceive you as, right? If I have a reputation for doing this and then I don't do it, am I going to be okay with that? Am I going to be able to sleep at night? And also I like to explain things with extremes. So if I have a reputation of being perfect, which I don't, but for the sake of this analogy, if I have a reputation of being perfect, being outstanding, well, what happens when I make a mistake? Do I try to cover it up so I don't ruin my reputation? Do I try to, you see what I mean? But most of the time, we're trying to correct our image. And nowadays, since we are on screens, we have the profilicity, the performance culture, and the simulacra, and things are getting a little bit out of hand because, in essence, we're just trying to protect the image instead of understanding the repercussions. Everything is a trade-off. Consequences are inevitable. Sometimes they're good consequences, sometimes they're bad consequences. Sometimes we do not know what our choices will do. I think there was a way to I want to change it to the next one. How do I change it to this one? There we go. Friendship is the quiet miracle of being fully seen without being diminished. And I think what I'm trying to say with that is feedback. You want a friend to tell you what they're seeing, even though you might have a blind spot when it comes to that situation, that choice, that whatever it is. Sometimes a friend will say, hold on a second, can I say something here? Because I think you're about to make a big mistake. Or, you know what I mean? It's like you have ketchup on your face. Is it okay if they say, hey, hold on a second, you got something on your face? Or is it better to not say anything at all? So the conversation, a friend, what if a friend never tells you that you're about to pet a poisonous snake? Is it really a friend that says, I don't want to say anything because what if they don't like my opinion and they might take it the wrong way? True, sometimes friends will misunderstand what we're trying to say. But anyways, the quiet miracle that is friendship, of being fully seen without being diminished, to be able to have conversations and not feel like they're doing you wrong by being honest in a kind and loving way. Of course, friends always are trying to have your best in mind, I suppose. Harsh environments, that's inevitable, right? We live with imperfect people. I'm imperfect myself. Difficult people seem to be everywhere. Circumstances, man, the weather's imperfect. Nature is imperfect, right? We live in a fallen world. I mean, I think if you subscribe to X, I'm sure other platforms are showing you the fallout from a 7.4 earthquake that hit Colombia, trying circumstances. But is that part of reality, right? If we don't expect the weather to be imperfect, if we don't expect people to be imperfect, if we don't expect ourselves to be imperfect, are we going to be really disappointed and really frustrated and really upset? So does our epistemology, what we think is versus what we wish things were, if that calibration is not correct, will it help us, not help us? Opinions, right? I don't know. Will it? The freedom to be able to say what's really going on. If I have a shoe, if I'm going on a hike with my wife because she invites me, I'm an introvert and I'm like, I'd rather read my book. But then again, I'm always reading a book. So my wife wants to hang out with me and I'm like, yeah, I can use some walking. That's good for me. So yeah, let's go walking. We begin to hike and I get a rock in my shoe. Well, there's a few options. I guess one of the options is to ignore the rock, to just keep walking and pretend nothing happened. The other option is to say to my wife, hey, do you mind if we stop? And then to explain the why I need to stop. Or do I try to save face by, like, no rock is going to stop me. There's no need for me to pause, etc. Like as far as if I'm so, where I can't even stop for a second, if I can't even admit that I have a rock in my shoe, you get the what idea. But this is a placeholder, the rock in the shoe, for anything that you're unwilling to disclose to a close person. I mean, a spouse. What I mean, to live with the person day in and day out. So, um, what could be closer than a spouse? So, sometimes um, can we, um, can we even say, can we say that? Can we say, um, the elephant in the room? I mean, the main thing that's concerning. It looks like Claire has been bold enough to join the conversation. Hi, Claire. How's it going?
Hi, Alex. Good to see you again. I saw you on Chad's channel, and it seems to have inspired you. And you've got all your new um, whistles and bells for your new um, Streamyard. You're obviously trying out the features.
Yeah, I printed this little thing here because I was thinking
Mhm.
like the plain wall. I don't want to have personal pictures of me or my family. So I'm like, but I don't like to see a plain wall either. So I'm like, I don't want to spend too much money on a neon sign because that's for what I'm doing here, hosting a few people and having 4 views, 10 views. I'm like, I don't think that would be prudent, but I'm like, there's something I can do than a plain wall. And yes, I'm practicing some features on this Streamyard because
Mhm.
I am planning on hosting it whenever I get some free time. Clara, I haven't came up with a specific date and time because I would like to put it in advance, like at least a day or two in advance, so whomever is free at that date and time can participate. But I haven't got there yet. I've been a little
Mhm.
tied up.
Mhm. Yes, scheduling it would create more interest. And did you want to show off the features that you are?
Right. There's a few. So these are just some of the things that um, as far as to engage the conversation, because Clara, you host, so you're familiar that at first you have to kind of do a monologue. You kind of like are talking to the wall because there's no one there, and you need
Mhm.
content. You need to not get stuck and be like, ah, ah. So I was trying to um, put things that can get me going while someone decides to hop in. And
Mhm.
so there's a
Well,
few
I suppose the
more.
title is the most important, really, because
I'm sorry.
I often find when I start monologuing, I forget. I have to keep looking at the title because I've forgotten what the title is, and I know I've wandered off the
Right.
subject.
Well, Claire, if you wanna copy this strategy, because like I said, this is something that I'm trying to that it's on screen, because I do have notes too, but that's sometimes more distracting than helpful. So, but at
Mhm.
least this way it's not in my periphery, and I can kind of see, and maybe later on somebody says, "Oh, that one thing," and then I can pull that up so we're on the same page. Or if somebody has just joined the conversation, I can say, "Oh yeah, maybe do you want to talk about this or that?" And that kind of so like this image here, as far as do not join the polluted mind society, and obviously that's supposed to be a placeholder for whatever whatever it is that I'm trying to say with this. And so, um, if you allow me, the whole concept of choices and um, the company we keep, you know,
Mhm.
sometimes we change slowly, like boiling a frog. We don't even notice that we change because the people that we hang out with. I used to be in that. Um, I used to be part of that. I was I was seeking for a particular type of friend, and long story short, we were all living destructively. So we all influenced each other little by little, and we did end up um, more polluted than not.
Mhm.
And now that I have gray hair, I am more interested in drinking unpolluted water, if I
Mhm.
if I have the choice, than polluted water. Just like I'd rather eat uncontaminated food than contaminated food. But um, but you have to be aware of what constitutes polluted and cooked properly,
Exactly.
etc. Um,
So we have to be conscious about principles and what words mean, and sometimes people think they use that they think they agree because they use the same word, but they have a different meaning to the words that they use. And recently in TLC they were talking about friendship, and I think, yeah, it's actually quite a difficult word to define, because you could be generous and say everybody's your friend, and this means anybody who says hi to you, or you're being very, very selective, and you might only have about five of them, if that, the ones that you think are really your friends.
well, yes, and like I said, it also, on the live stream, um, the end of Chad's live stream, because I wasn't, I was busy I was putting these things together, so I didn't catch the whole 6 hour conversation, but I mentioned briefly that I used to live in a destructive manner, and my acquaintances were destructive in nature, and I did have the opportunity to seek sober-minded, well put together acquaintances that would become my friend, but I kind of didn't want
Hmm.
to go that route because I wasn't ready at that time. Um,
Yeah.
However, I think sometimes we don't, especially the youth, we don't realize what we're doing to ourselves
No.
sometimes.
And that's why we sort of, well, not sort of, we do need a religion. So even if we break the rules, we can think, oh, well, I wasn't supposed to be doing that thing anyway, and and that, I think, is a very simple mechanism that our ancestors were using, but we seem to have forgotten about it. Maybe it's because we think we're too smart. And well, I really like this title, Sacred Social Order versus the Desire to Control. Um, but I was thinking, you need to exert control in order to maintain the social order, don't you?
Well, here's so let me because there's the juxtaposition of one versus the other, and the desire to control. So the sacred social order supposedly now, and I don't want to uh, be tribalistic and talk about my religion in particular, but in general, religions have their social orders, like Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, you name it, right? They have their sacred social orders. And
Which is
if,
patriarchy, isn't it? That's what it
well,
really means.
so
People who
it depends
support
on
marriage.
it depends on the social order that you're talking specifically, but I want to talk generalities to get the concept, because like I said, I don't want to be tribalistic, because that's not the point I was trying to make. My point is, when you want to be a participant of a sacred social order, those rules have been handed down generations past. So
Hmm.
it's kind of like the game. I've mentioned this in other live streams, where you have different games, like a game of basketball and a game of chess. But if you decide to partake in chess, and you want to partake in your local chess tournament, and there happens to be a local basketball tournament for the community, you even though those are both possibilities, you have to choose one over the other. You can't. So, for instance, if I want to choose chess, I have to understand the rules of chess, because if I cheat, I do not win the championship. I get disqualified, right? And if I start to play basketball in a chess tournament, they're going to kick me out. So, in if I want to partake of the sacred social order, those rules, those what you ought to pursue, already been handed down. Now, the desire to control is just the opposite. I don't want your suggestions. I don't want this. I don't want that. I am in control. I am going to make my own rules. I am going to make my own path. I will, right? I will make my own rules. I will try to change the rules. I will try to change the order. I will try to change ad infinitum. So the that's the what the conversation, as far as not to be tribalistic, but to understand the concept of when you adopt a sacred social order versus when you reject a sacred social order.
Yes, do you mean by sacred social order patriarchy?
Well, patriarchy is it's a tradition. By sacred, so the word sacred already speaks about something that it's well, here, give me a second. Not materialistic in nature, not scientific in nature, not logic in nature. It is something almost like as if you're talking about the supernatural, something outside of man. Now, Buddhism is a little bit different because they don't believe in God, but by sacred, I mean it's like the laws that the Creator has given us. So that's that's completely um, the opposite of materialistic, right? The Creator, if again, not to be tribalistic, but if the Creator in this sacred social order says, these are what I suggest you ought to do. Now, if I want to partake in that sacred social order, then I kind of try to align with those suggestions. Or if I don't, I'm pretty much rejecting that because I want to do it my way instead of whatever has been handed down. But patriarchy, I think, is more like of a tradition, kind of like saying um, uh, communism and capitalism. Those are not part of the sacred social order. Those are more like traditions that we have created to govern ourselves. That's a little bit different than sacred in nature.
Yes, I mean, I was hoping, we could just generally agree that secular political ideologies are more into maintaining and protecting the patriarchy than secular um, political ideologies. Religions are um, more likely to support patriarchy than secular political ideologies, which tend to undermine patriarchy, I would suggest.
Again, but it's so when one is an adult, at the end of the day, one is given the freedom to choose. Now, you might say there's some consequences if I decide to defy the sacred social order, because see, I understand where you might be heading because there are such social orders in certain countries that have the sacred and the political embedded as a one entity. And that's a little bit different to parse out because rejecting that social order also involves rejecting the political order. And when you do that, you instantly become enemy of the state. But like I
Mhm.
said, that's why I don't want to get tribalistic because I'm not here to criticize another person's religion because that's not my intentions.
But in order to maintain any kind of order, you need to enforce the rules, right? And to make sure that the people likely to support your order, whatever it is,
Okay,
get to
okay,
run
cool.
the play.
So let me Clara, let me give you let's pretend that I'm going to write a very short story just so that we have freedom to talk, and it's going to be very brief, but and I'm going to add the concept of the patriarchy in my story. Science fiction. So, and I am going to create a story that involves a group of 20 people. And these 20 people, by happenstance, happen to be stranded in an island. And the island, luckily, has enough water and enough food um, to keep them alive until they hopefully get rescued sometime in, whether it's a month, 2 months, 3 years, 10 years. That's something to be hashed out in this short story. But in this story, there's going to be 20 people. So how are these 20 people? Remember, these 20 people are going to have no no specific rules. There's no government there. There's no religion there. There's no nothing there. It's just them 20 individuals that are just gonna be thrown into this place with no rules, no religion, but each individualistic opinion, perspective, skill, weakness, shortcomings, health. Everybody's different, so everybody has a little bit to give and a little bit to taxing, because whether everybody pulls their own weight or not, that's again, we're going to create this story. But in that story, Clara, how would they make, how would they survive longer than 2 weeks?
Well, they have to choose a leader and do what he says, because there will be inevitably disputes arising, and they'll need somebody to
Okay,
adjudicate.
okay, but you're assuming that if someone gives a suggestion, that other people are going to be in line and they're going to like the suggestion. What if these people have different worldviews and different backgrounds? And what if there's more than one suggestion? There's 20 people after all.
Well, they can vote, right? Like the papal conclave rules. Like you get all
Well,
these.
Claire, thank you for helping me write this story. But what if some people don't like the whole concept of votes? What if they're like, what if? Okay, now I'm gonna make it, because it's a story. We need to make it interesting, because if nothing happens page after page, people are like, well, this is a snooze fest. This is boring. Now I know in human nature that there are those people that have a tendency to be bullies, or have a tendency to be uh, very strong-headed, and they want to make the rules themselves. So what if one person says, Claire, or sorry, not Claire, but what if some person makes a suggestion? Hey, how about we vote? How about we try to figure it out together as a group? And somebody says, you know what? I don't like it. How about I tell you what's going to go down? How about I start assigning duties? How about I start taking over, because I have some experience and I have a bunch of know-how. Whether they do or not, we can write this story. But what if there's a guy that's going to be the bully? So there's going to be the antagonist of the story, or maybe he's the anti-hero, or maybe, I don't know. Maybe they'll take him out. Maybe he will take other people out. We don't know. We're we're going to create a story which is science fiction. So what if I decide, let's have a bully, because bullies exist in nature.
And maybe sometimes they're necessary. The only way to actually choose a leader, right, is for everybody to talk to everybody else. So you say there's 20. So if you're one of them, you'd have to talk to all the others to, at least get to know them, and maybe they might want to do a deal. Vote for me and I'll give you this, or vote for me and so there would have to be some kind of selection process, because you would logically and necessarily need somebody to tell you what to do, and you kind of need, all these ideas. You need to discuss it with the others,
Correct,
but
but
sensibly.
Blair, are there rude people in the world, and people that are really narcissistic and they don't listen to other people's suggestions?
Well, hopefully there will be many enough people who see the sense of your proposal, because if you want to be leader, you even if you're the bully, you have to have legitimacy. Like, well, most people voted for you, or something, or you bully them
Okay,
into voting for you, or whatever.
so Claire, I'm going to go to a science fiction story. Are you familiar with the book, The Lord of the Flies?
Yes.
And that is a fictional story. about kids that get stranded in an island, and they do try to
Mhm.
find ways to rule themselves and try to survive in different ways. But some things don't go according to plan
Mhm.
because in that story they do have a bully.
Mhm.
And they do have a leader that wants to do the rational thing, and they want to do. They're humane. It sounds like, and they want to do it via consensus. But there is the other guy who wants to do it his way, and
Mhm.
it becomes tri. The story goes that they become tribalistic, and they begin to do the rule of or barbarism. You know what I mean? Kind of like in it, because I do know that when I was in school in college, there was assignments that everybody dreaded, the dreaded work assignment, and you're going to be graded. And there was this thing that had to be done, and there was a timeline, and your grade is going to be affected, and nonetheless, it's a group thing. Did you ever encounter any like a group activity where there was some fallout on how the group did or didn't do what they were supposed to do?
Um, yes, that there are probably instances of that. Um, but I mean, but all we're saying is we will have to choose sort of rational ways of choosing a leader, or you're saying maybe somebody emerges and nobody even dreams of questioning him. That's also possible.
But Claire, what happens when you have an unruly person that wants to dominate, and then that
Well,
person
then you can gang
recruits,
up with the
and
others
that,
and stop him
well,
dominating.
so and I like I said, people, everybody's different and everybody's wired differently, and we do see this in society where the people that are bullies actually team up with other unruly. You know what I mean? It's like then you get like three or four people that are, because they're strong and they're strong-headed and selfish, they want to dominate the weaker or the group because they're like, well, guess we're gonna have to fight it out if you don't like how we're gonna do things. And we do. I mean, I do know that that exists in society. I know that rationality. That's what I'm saying. Is Genghis Khan? You can't. You can't you can't go up to him and give him your philosophy and think you're going to be okay and that he's going to listen to your logic because Genghis Khan was powerful, had an army, and there was no talking with that guy.
Yeah, but if you did want something from him, and I'm sure people from time to time did, they would have to, adopt a certain a manner of supplication and respect, and maybe kowtowing or whatever it is that, would get him to listen to you properly. You can't, that involves understanding of, the customs of the court and maybe his personal preferences, bringing a gift, whatever. So it does take a bit of social skills and social awareness of, who is likely to support you and who isn't, and forming alliances.
And so that's where I go back to the sacred social order that's already been established. There's plenty of religions that have been around before I was born, and some do rule by conquering. Some rule by, if you like to join, you may. If you don't want to join, you don't have to. And then there's the complete, like, I don't want to join your sacred order. I'm going to do things via what the science says, what this government says, what my philosophy teacher says, what my mom or dad or cousin or my best friend says. That there's that also, the agency aspect of a person.
Yeah, and they might say, I did want to join, but you might say, well, we need your skills, and we would all work better and have a higher chance of survival if we cooperated, and and you need protection, and you can't live on your own in a cave somewhere, and what if you fall sick or whatever. So I guess you will use arguments to persuade people to do things your way, or you could use, your size and strength to intimidate people. But it's better to, persuade people than to frighten them.
No, I do agree with you. And you mentioned something. I think you said a word um, that kind of created this little algorithm in my head. Because I do know. Have you heard of the word hikikomori? Um,
It's a Japanese
Coined by the
word.
Japanese. Yes, a Japanese word coined in the 80s.
It rings a bell, but I don't remember.
Yeah, so they coined it to give a term to what was going on in their culture in the 80s. And it took a while for that to come over to the Americas and to Europe. Hikikomori's extreme, long acting bouts of depression ish, where these people, adults, capable young adults, don't want to socialize with anyone. So the hikikomori wouldn't interact, not even with their parents. They would
Oh,
be
the
in the
grass
room for.
eaters.
I'm sorry.
Um, right. I thought you meant the herbivores, but yes. So they don't even come out of their room. Yes.
Right. So yeah. So we in the West we have a different term. I think it's agoraphobia,
Hmm.
fear of crowded spaces, fear of it's a specific
Of going
fear that
outside.
comes with being around people. Yeah, being around people, right? Because it's just like claustrophobia, to be afraid of small spaces, or to be afraid to be in an elevator. But there's people that are afraid to be around people, um, or especially strangers, and so they withdraw. And little by little, they communicate less, and they have less social interactions, and they have less friends, and they get to extremes where they no longer want to participate in the social dynamic fabric of what would some people consider normal everyday living.
Hmm.
And that's because um, they're unable to maneuver with difficult people, difficult conversations, difficult ideas, difficult opinions, difficult weather. Um, even just people looking at them, just they crumble inside. And they have 1,000 imaginations as far as that are completely like destructive in nature, and they just want to hide and not be seen. And over time, because it took a while for it to hit the West, but it hit Japan in the 80s, and that's not a that's not really good for society, in my opinion.
Yes. Did they say what caused it?
That is a great question. Great question. And that is a nice question. One is to see that it is a problem. Like, oh, that doesn't sound good. And the better question is, what causes it? So, oh, there's my timer. Jeez. Um, I so I don't have much. I do have an appointment. Um,
Okay.
and but I'll say this. Great question. What causes certain things? And in my intro, I think in my intro, yeah, I think in my intro, I mentioned the this um, analogy that I want to work on some more, which is the rock in the shoe problem, where I'm hiking with my wife and I get a rock in my shoe, and I'm like, oh, so now I have to tell my wife to stop walking so I can have enough time to get the shoe out of my rock. so that I can continue to walk with her, right? And now now that sounds realistic, but in today's day and age, some people would, even though they feel pain and discomfort, they would be very hesitant to express a revelation of I'm imperfect, I'm weak. Stop. Even though you might consider like I may not be able to keep up with you because you're a woman and I'm a man, and you're gonna see me as weak, but I really do have a rock in my shoe, and let me show you the rock. You know what I mean? All this, where this extreme absurdist mind frame, which at one point in time we wouldn't think that people do, but in today's day and age, there is a crazy gambit where we can't even mention the obvious and the elephant in the room. And if I have a rock in my shoe, with me, I have no problem saying to my wife, "Hey, can you please give me a minute? Can you stop for a minute? There's a rock in my shoe," and I don't have, no illusion. I'm, as far as my identity and how she sees me, I be the first one to express to her that I am not a perfect person, and that I do have shortcomings and weaknesses and blind spots and work to do, and I happen to have a rock in my shoe. You know what I mean? But some people actually walk in everyday life with the rock in their shoe, and it creates discomfort and pain, and sometimes that becomes a wound, and the wound gets infected and gets worse, and on and on and on, and and we would hope that such reality wouldn't exist, but we are going on the way towards a hikikomori, and I hope that we are able to regain the freedom to be good friends, and to say we got to be able to have decent, honest conversations where we don't offend each other, but we're able to talk about significant things, about what hurts us, what harms us, etc. But anyways, that's one of the analogies that I'm working on, the rock in the shoe, on a hike, and telling somebody else to give you a minute while you stop and take the shoe out, or take the rock out, and admitting that that's okay, to be able to do that instead of to live with the discomfort and pain of having a rock in your shoe. Claire, did you lose the connection? Or are
I'm
you
sorry,
typing something?
I think I did fall asleep. No.
Oh,
I didn't
no,
fall
that's
asleep,
fine.
I'm
That's fine.
afraid.
No, that's quite all right.
Did you want to recap about what you just said?
Oh, I was saying that I've been working on this new analogy, the rock in the shoe concept.
Yes,
Where
I
go
heard
hiking.
that.
Yeah, and the ability to be able to say that, you would think that it should be no biggie, but in today's world, it's beginning harder and harder to mention and to admit that there are things that are affecting us and are causing us grief, but we're unable to express that, and so the pain gets worse and worse. And the ability to be able to have a friend.
Yes, and and there is this idea of male fragility, because they may carry on for a bit, but inside the breaking up, and having problems adjusting, or taking to substance abuse, and they of all people need to be supported by the government, by society, by having a wife to make them feel it's all worthwhile, and that is the spiritual need that I think a lot of men feel they lack, because they're the ones who are talking about the meaning crisis, which was
Right.
a long time ago, that the feeling that the system is not fair, and they don't want to do it anymore, right? And if they don't want to do it anymore, it means they won't get married, and then the women won't be married, and then they'll have, badly parented children if they have children at all, and they won't be a credit to their parents, and they might have all kinds of mental health issues and underachievement, and then they won't even get the jobs because the jobs go to the immigrant workers. And then you have the cycle of anger and disappointment and bad relationships and people who don't want to invest in time, their time and energy in parenting and stable marriages, and neither does the
Right.
government.
Right.
So in a way, it's a political and social and economic problem,
Right.
which is a lot to admit and say is happening. Because I know I go around telling these men, and they don't want to hear it. But of course, they don't want to hear that their political system is no longer working, or their economy, or their society.
But I do
And it's
think
hard
that
to.
it's nice that at least some places like the TLC, by and large, now no one's perfect. I understand that, but where we're actually are able to express
Mhm.
ourselves and be able to have such comments and topics as the one you're bringing out, that maybe our political system is not running the most optimal, right? Maybe it's not the best as it could be. Maybe it has changed, and not for the better, um, or ourselves, or our traditions, or etc. And it's nice that at least there are still some places where people can actually have a decent conversation and are able to talk about things of substance with one another. And I think that's kind of cool.
Mhm. Yeah,
Well, thank you,
it's
Claire. I do.
important to be able to discuss these things. And also,
Yeah. Well,
oh, you have to go? Okay.
yeah. Thank you, Claire. I do appreciate humping on. It was nice to do a little back and forth. Hopefully, we're able to talk about your
Yes.
concerns in the future, and we can kind of do a little back and forth. And well, until next time. And thanks.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
All right. Bye.